If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the views of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliates or sponsors.
Hello and welcome to another edition of The More Show, which is sponsored by the Mindscape magazine. On today's show, I'm about to be joined with our guest Howard Storm. Now, Howard was born in Newton, Massachusetts in 1946. He was a professor of art for 20 years at Northern Kentucky University. In 1985, he had a near-death experience in Paris, which transformed his life. He eventually studied to become a barrister and in 1992 was ordained in the United Church of Christ. On numerous occasions, he has communicated the message he received from his near-death experience to various groups and through the media. He has appeared on shows including The Oprah Winfrey Show, 48 Hours, and the Discovery Channel. Howard Storm, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Now, Howard, tell me who you were prior to 1985, before your near-death experience.
I was a 38-year-old college professor. I was a professor of art, very aggressive. I liked having my own way. I thought of myself as a big, bad bear, and I believed in a scientific explanation of things. I was a materialist. I didn't have any faith. I thought religion was silly and superstitious. And the people that I hung out with, my friends at the university, were all atheists, and we all thought we were way too intelligent for superstition or myths or religion or anything like that.
So you would say that religion was an opium for the masses. That sort of life
Absolutely.
that life never continued.
Yeah. I'd heard of near-death experience, and I figured that was some sort of dopamine rush that a person got as like a little bonus at the end. To a little euphoria to keep you from suffering, termination of life.
Now, before we continue here, how would you sum up a near-death experience?
Well, they vary enormously, but one thing that they certainly have in common is that they're life-changing. And people have these mystical experiences, which of course has to do with being conscious at a time when you're not supposed to be conscious anymore, at a time when you're dying, in the dying process, somewhere down that road, and people have these mystical conscious experiences that change their lives.
Now, at the time, in 1985, you were creating works of art, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, what kind of works of art did you create?
I was a modern artist. My work was fairly abstract, and was very much involved with the art world and was having some success exhibiting my work and showing it around.
Now, did you ever come across hard times during that period?
No, things were going really well for me, except I had a lot of depression, and I just figured that was the cost of being a realist, was since life had no meaning and there was no purpose to it other than whatever pleasures you could achieve along the way. No wonder why one would be a little melancholy since there was no point to any of it.
So, at, I would say 38 years old, you were in Paris, you collapsed. Tell me what happened.
At 11 o'clock in the morning, I had a perforation of the small stomach. There was no warning of it, really. It just hit me like that. What was happening was the stomach acid and juices had erupted through the wall of my small stomach into my abdominal cavity, and when that hit, the main component of that is hydrochloric acid. When that hit, it was just excruciatingly painful, and it dropped me right down to the ground, screaming and yelling and kicking and thrashing. I didn't know where it came from or what it was happening. And my wife called the desk in the hotel, and they called an emergency service, and a doctor came, and he knew almost immediately what was wrong. He examined me, and he called for an ambulance to take me to a hospital, which came and took me across Paris to a public hospital.
Now, I can imagine that being extremely painful. Now, what sort of a medical attention did you receive at the time?
Well, the emergency doctor was very nice. The two doctors that examined me at the hospital, which was a public assistance hospital in Paris, were very nice. My wife was along, so they took my medical history. They knew what was wrong, told me that I had to have surgery like now, not like in an hour or two, or was going to go right to a surgical hospital and have surgery. And off I was sent to another hospital. And when I got to the other hospital, I didn't know what was going on, but apparently because it was a Saturday, there was no surgeon available to do any surgery. So I was parked in a room and left there for 10 hours and was never seen that entire time by a doctor.
And I believe at that time you thought this was it for you, didn't you? I mean, you actually said goodbye to your wife, did you not?
Well, yeah, the pain that had sent me to the ground screaming and thrashing just got worse and worse and worse, and I was never given any medication. There was no procedures done. On a couple occasions, the nurse came into the room, and I begged her for, stuff, and she said, "Sorry, there's no doctor available. Nobody could prescribe anything without a doctor's permission." So they didn't give me anything. They didn't do anything. They just left me there. The doctors in the United States told me that my life expectancy was 5 hours, and I was in that state for 10 hours. And I don't see it as I don't take it personally. It's just the system over there,
Yeah.
Good for you. You missed out. No doctor around to do the surgery. So tough luck. You die. Yeah.
So at this point, as far as you was concerned, when you die, you enter oblivion, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. When the nurse told me at 8:30 that night that they were unable to locate a doctor and they'd try and get one the next day, which would have been Sunday, I said goodbye to my wife, closed my eyes, and went unconscious. And I had been fighting off death for hours and hours, fighting off the pain, and I knew that the simplest thing for me to do, and the only sensible thing for me to do now, was to just let it take its course. And so I went unconscious, and fully expecting that to be the end of my pitiful little 38-year-old life. But instead I awoke from my unconsciousness, and I was sitting next to the bed, and I felt terrific. I didn't have the pain in the stomach. I was very aware of my situation, knew that where I was, and that I was waiting to have surgery. And I was unable to communicate with my wife or the roommate that I had, who was a very kind elderly Frenchman, and that was very disturbing because I felt perfectly real, yet yelling and screaming at them to get their attention, I was unable to get any reaction from them whatsoever.
Okay. And
Very disturbing.
did you try to touch them at all? I mean, could you physically touch them?
Yeah, I could. I mean, I could feel everything. Just actually more. I could feel more than I normally was capable of feeling. My senses were very heightened.
Right. So you were still solid, yeah. But you were all of a sudden sat next to yourself, who was lying unconscious in bed. Now, what was that like to view yourself?
It was very disturbing because I know that you can't be two places at once. So it was impossible for me to be standing there looking at myself lying in the bed. So I had to come to the conclusion that although that looked like me, it couldn't possibly be me. Now, I couldn't figure out how there would be something in my bed that looked like me. So the only thing that I could conclude was those clever French people had made a wax replica of me and snuck it into the bed while I was unconscious. But I didn't know why they would do that, except some sort of perverse, need to drive me crazy.
Yeah.
I knew that was crazy too. I mean, I knew that none of this made any sense, but I'm trying to think of some logical reason why, I would be in the bed, but I wasn't in the bed. I was standing there looking at me,
So, tell me about who met you then, and on what they were doing.
Well, I heard people outside the room. They would not come into the room, which was bright and lit. They stayed out in the hall, which was dank, dark. And they were saying in English, no French accent, which I thought was peculiar for personnel at the hospital, because obviously the people at the hospital all spoke French. But these people were speaking English, and they were saying, "Hurry up, let's go, we've been waiting for you." And I went over to the doorway of the room, and they were back off in this darkness. And I said, I'm very sick. I'm supposed to have surgery. I've been waiting all day. And they said, "We know all about you. We've been waiting for you. It's time for you to go. Let's go." So I thought that they were from the hospital to take me to surgery. So I left the room and went with them into the hallway. And they started leading me into this, down this emptiness, this dankness, which I thought was the way to surgery, but turned out to be the way to nowhere. And we just journeyed on for an interminable amount of time.
So, I mean, this was a sort of hallway you was walking down, would you say?
Well, I thought it was, but I came to realize that it had no features at all. Other than it being a flat surface we were walking on, there were no walls, no nothing. It was just emptiness. And as we journeyed, it got darker and darker, and the people increased in number and came closer around me as we went on. And I tried to ask them questions and things, but they were very nasty and wouldn't communicate with me. Just told me to keep moving, keep going, like that.
What did they look like?
Because they were keeping the distance from me in the darkness, it was really hard to see. They looked very ordinary, just bland. They seemed to be dressed in gray, and there were no clear features to them at all.
And were they heckling you or laughing at you?
At this point, no. But as we went further down into it, they started to say rude things about me. And when I would say, "What are you saying? What are you doing?" And, others of them would say, "Don't start. Don't. It's not time. Wait. Be quiet. Don't talk to him." And it was all getting really, really scary, because some of them were trying to tell others to be careful, not to frighten me too much. So finally, we got to a place where I couldn't see anything anymore, and I was just terrified. And I said, "I'm not going to go any further. I want to go back." And they said, well, you're almost there, and they started to push and pull at me, so I tried to fight them off, and the more that I fought with them, the more they got excited by that, and they were sort of playing with me, people scratching and biting and pushing and shoving and hitting, and the more I tried to fight them off, the more agitated they became. And I became aware that now there were a lot of them, and since it was pitch black, I have no idea how many there were, maybe dozens and dozens or hundreds, I don't know. But the noise became very, very loud of them screaming and yelling and jeering and insulting, and I fought really hard as I could to protect myself, but with so many of them, it was a losing battle, and they did what they wanted with me, and it was very demeaning. And if they had wanted to just tear me from limb to limb, they could have, but that's not what they wanted to do. They just wanted to play. Their play was to elicit pain from me.
So, very much an emotional, traumatized you at the time, then?
Oh, yeah. And that was, as I eventually, was defeated and laying on the ground all ripped up and unable to respond to them anymore, I realized that the emotional, psychological violation was much worse than the physical pain that I was experiencing, because what they did was very degrading.
So physical pain?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
What happened next?
Well, I'm lying there unresponsive to them anymore, which made them very unhappy. And I heard myself, which this didn't come out of my throat, it didn't come off my lips, but I heard myself say, pray to God, and I thought, what a dumb idea, I don't believe in God. And the second time, same thing, pray to God, and I thought, I don't even know how to pray. I couldn't pray if I wanted to. And a third time, same thing, pray to God. And I was thinking, when I was a kid, and my parents used to take us to church, and we said prayers, and what were those prayers? And I was trying to remember things that I'd learned as a child, and it got all confused with things that I'd memorized all through school, and it was just garbled. And when I began to try to murmur some of these things in an attempt basically to remember some prayers to see if they would do any good in terms of getting rid of these people who were tormenting me, some of these things were murmured by me, and the people around me became very, very agitated, and they were saying to me in gross language that there was no God, nobody could hear me, and that if I didn't stop it, they were going to make things much worse for me. Well, I finally was able to fight back by any mention of God that I could make. So I was blasting them with little bits and pieces of things that I was trying to recall from basically my childhood. And it had the effect of driving them away from me into the darkness. And they told me that they would be back, but I was free of them for a while, and so I lay there and started to think about my situation and what was going on.
So, now you look back, all those years ago, would you say you was in hell?
The way I look at it was I was being processed, sort of, when you go into the Army, they kind of have to take away any hope, sort of break you down to make you into a good soldier. I think I was being processed for hell, and I think I was certainly in the beginning stages of being prepared for hell, which I think gets much worse than what I experienced.
So, did you think that this was a dream, or did it feel a lot more realer than sort of life?
no comparison to a dream. Obviously, I've had millions of dreams in my life, and there's no relationship between this and dream. Matter of fact, I know this is hard for people to appreciate, but life is a dream compared to what I experienced. Ever since I've been back, I sort of see the world as a dream, because this world isn't nearly as real as what I experienced during this whole thing.
So, what words did you utter then to get out of there?
Well, I recalled myself as a child sitting in a Sunday school classroom thinking about a little song that children learn in Sunday school, Jesus Loves Me, and when I was recalling that, I remembered myself as a child believing in that, and so I said, Jesus, save me. I yelled out, Jesus, save me, in the hopes that it might possibly be true, and to my delight and surprise, it was true, and that he came into that darkness as a being of light, and he reached down and touched me, and all my gore and wounds and things just kind of disappeared, and he picked me up and embraced me and held me to him and carried me up out of that place.
And what did Jesus look like?
So bright that I couldn't see anything at all except for a blinding brightness. But when I was very young, I worked for a year as a welder, and when you bring your mask down too slowly, you get flashed, and it really hurts your eyes. Sometimes you go home with tremendous headaches from flashing yourself from welding too much. But this light was brighter than that, but it didn't hurt like bright light does in this world. It was just overwhelming. And of course, the love that came with him was what was the chief experience that I was having, was being loved by him.
And how did that make you feel?
Well, it was wonderful, but also I was beginning to feel very guilty because I had spent my entire adult life saying that was all a lot of nonsense and silliness, and now I was being rescued from this horrible place of torment by this being whom I had denied his existence my entire adult life, and I was feeling pretty badly about it, and I finally thought to myself, he's made a terrible mistake. And he spoke to me for the first time telepathically, and he said that he always kind of spoke in plural. He said, we don't make mistakes, and you do belong here. That's because we were moving out of the world of darkness towards the world of light, and I'm like getting this really feeling that we're headed towards God, heaven, the angels, the whole works is up ahead of us, and all the stuff that I always said was nonsense is what we were moving towards, and I felt like a piece of garbage and really, really stupid. And he proceeded to assure me that it was okay.
And did you feel that when you was going towards the white light that this is where you belonged?
Yes, and I had very mixed feelings. I was very conflicted because, of course, it's got to be preferable to where I'd been, but I also was feeling that I was unfit, not worthy. Like I had been scum rescued out of the gutter, and now I'm being taken to the royal palace, and it's like, this isn't good either.
Yeah.
I'm not ready not ready to meet the king and the queen quite yet.
Did you feel that you'd been to this place before?
No, I did not. It was all new to me.
Okay, and tell me about what they showed you when you ended up where you ended up.
Well, we never got to heaven or anything. We stopped. We were between the world of light and the world of darkness, and he said that he wanted to show me my life, so he called out, and some other beings of light, whom I refer to as angels, came, who had, unbeknownst to me, been with me during my life, around me during my life, and had recorded my life, and we proceeded to watch my life chronologically from beginning to end, going over scenes, exploring things that happened during these scenes, in other words, exploring the feelings that people had when they saw my life, exploring the impact of things that I did or didn't do with people, seeing the consequences of my life in addition to just the actions. And it was fun at first, but as my life proceeded, it became less amusing because I saw that my manipulative and my selfishness were very displeasing to Jesus and the angels, and quite unattractive, actually. And what they were interested in was how I had been compassionate, how I'd cared about other people, how I'd helped other people, and we were seeing less and less of that and more self-serving action.
So did you get to feel the feelings of what people went through that I suppose you had hurt?
Very much so. It was very disturbing.
And
because I'd sort of gone through life thinking that I was like the victim of like an unfair and unjust world made up of a lot of cruel people, and what I was seeing in my life review was that I was basically the unfair and unjust world, and I wasn't a victim at all. I was more of the victimizer than the victim. It's very disturbing to see the truth of it.
So was it a case then they were more concerned with whether you had been a compassionate person or not?
That's all they compared. That's all they compared about was whether I was compassionate or not. That was the only thing that really mattered to them.
And what did they feel about the bad things that you did?
It was really quite clear that it literally caused them emotional pain. They were so disappointed in the things they did. The good news is that I knew that they cared about me and loved me, even though they really despised things that I was doing with my life. They never despised me, which was kind of interesting. That I felt that they loved me, even though they hated what I was doing with this life that I'd been given.
Well, I suppose if we all come from the same source, this energy source, this conscious source, then how can you hate your opposite or yourself that you see in an opposite? You've got to show some compassion, haven't you? If that makes sense, what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. God doesn't have an ounce of hate, but that doesn't mean that He likes what we do to each other. Matter of fact, it makes all of heaven unhappy when we are cruel to each other. And so unnecessary, too. I mean, to be cruel to each other. It would be a much nicer world if we could behave a little better.
And to sort of love one another as well.
Yeah. If we were actually to love one another, the world would be unrecognizable from what it is.
So, did you see any of your family members when you was reviewing your life? I mean, you say that Jesus was there, and there was perhaps some other angels there, but was any of your family members there?
I don't know. The reason why I don't know is they asked me if I wanted to see what they had looked like in their human form, and I told them no, that I hated people, and I never wanted to see another person ever again. And so they, out of respect for my wishes, never showed me who they had been, if they had been in human form, so I never got to see that because of my own stupidity.
Do you know, this reminds me very much of that film, Where Dreams May Come. That's the film.
with Robin Williams.
Yeah, one of the most spiritually underrated films ever produced, and the reason the film bottoms is because people just didn't get it. But I recommend anyone watch that, because what you're describing is much like that film. One thing I've got to ask you is, obviously, there's many people that have had near-death experiences, and a lot of these people have never talked about a sort of hell scenario or a lower astral plane, as you've sort of described.
Yeah.
Do you think you had that experience, or you had that particular experience because you create whatever experience you want to have when you pass? I mean, just because we pass doesn't mean we stop creating. And because you had no faith, let's put it that way, you wasn't really spiritual, you wasn't religious, and because of that, you brawl along this dark place that you went to. I mean, you basically created that experience to bring you to the light. I mean, do you think that particular place that I described as hell earlier on really does exist?
Yes, because and what you said is certainly one way of stating it. I mean, I could express it in other ways, but I don't disagree with anything that you said. That we, in a sense, do create our own reality, not only in this world, because I think there's people living in hell in this world, and also I think there's people living in bliss in this world, and in great joy and bliss. And basically, we do that ourselves. We create the state of our consciousness in this world, and to more appropriately to what you just said, when we die, our consciousness does continue. I mean, there's millions and millions of people that have had near-death experiences, and they've been going on since the beginning of time, and they're recorded throughout history. Plato recorded them, St. Paul recorded them. I mean, they're all over the history of the world. Universal, that consciousness continues after death, and what we are in this world is what we experience in the next. So if we are cruel, nasty people in this world, guess what? We're going to get to face that. All the monster, all the demons in us are going to become our reality. Or conversely, if we are a loving person, we're going to experience that love.
And would you say this goes the same for why you met with Jesus? As in, if someone passes and they want to meet with a family member, if their thoughts are on a loved family member that they've lost, then they'll meet that family member. And if they want to meet Mickey Mouse when they pass on, they'll meet Mickey Mouse.
Probably.
You are the creator.
I don't know if Mickey's real or not. Okay.
But no, whatever you want to create when you pass, whatever is your faith or whatever you believe in is what's going to materialize when you pass on. That's not to say the experience isn't real. It's very real. It's more real than it is here. But it's just how you perceive it.
Yeah, but the tricky part of the hook in all this, the real hook is, it's what's in our heart. So some wise guy is going to say, well, hey, then I'm going to go through life being, a real nasty person, and then when I die, I'll have a happy thought, and I'll just get, and everything will be just rosy. Sorry, Joker, it doesn't work that way, because what you live is what. When I say what's in your heart, of course I'm referring metaphorically to the core of your being, your soul, your spirit, whatever. So that if you live a loving life, you have created a soul of love, which is going to, be projected into the next world, into a universe of love, and conversely, a world of meanness or evil or cruelty will take you in that direction.
Okay. So for those listeners that are still not too sure about this place where you say that you went to after you had your out-of-body experience, and we've called it heaven or home, how can you scientifically explain the sort of near-death experience that you had and where you went to?
A way of trying to explain all this weird stuff. theoretical physicists now say that they believe that the universe is multidimensional, and I believe that there is contact, visitation, leakage between dimensions. So I think that when we talk about angels and demons and things like that, we're actually talking about dimensional exchanges. That it's the dimensions of existence are more permeable than we think. And so that when we die, our vibrational state, which is what connects us to this physical reality, changes, and we go into another dimension, into other dimensional states. And there are very desirable dimensional states, and there are ones that are not desirable. Kind of like tuning the instrument of our being, and we can tune it into this experience of love and light and harmony, or we can tune it into an experience of real torment and pain and destruction.
And a lot of people go for the latter, don't they? That's the problem.
Yeah, and it's sad because they don't really have to do that. It doesn't have to be that way. And the remarkable thing is, beautiful people can come out of the most horrible experiences. There are horrors of war and in slums and in all kinds of deprivation. You see a person like Nelson Mandela, who was a fine human being, who was imprisoned for much of his life, and he became like a real light to his country and to his people. And then you see other people who have pretty good circumstances, and they become mass murderers. And why? I don't know.
So, okay, let's get back to your story then, because it's really important that we get this story told. At the time that you was having your life reviewed, yeah, would you say that you had loved yourself more than your family? Would you say that you'd put your work in front of your family as well?
No, I think that actually that's the problem, is that I didn't love myself at all. When Jesus was asked, for example, what must we do? He said, love God, love your neighbor, love yourself. 3 things. And you can't love other people unless you love yourself. And loving God means that, nobody knows or understands God, but loving God means loving life. It means loving what's good. It means loving what's beautiful. It means loving a hope for a better world. That's what it means to love God. And to do all that, you've got to love yourself. And my problem was, and I think the problem with so many people, was like my dad was, hate to say it because he's gone, you're not supposed to speak ill of dead, but he was a very messed up human being who was very cruel, extremely critical, and I didn't have any love for myself. So that's what I was going around being this jerk, because I didn't really love myself, and this is so perverse, but I wanted other people to love me, but I was going about it all the wrong way, by trying to make them love me, Doesn't work out very well. Honestly, I think that's what people like Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler wanted. They just wanted someone to love them, They didn't know how to do it.
That's interesting. So, what did you ask after seeing your life replayed?
Well, Jesus and the angels invited me to ask anything I wanted, and so I asked them everything that I could think of to ask. I asked about the past, the future, personal questions, philosophical questions, and everything that I asked, they answered very patiently, very simply, very clearly. The one thing that I asked that was they gave me the most unsatisfactory response to was, I said that I wanted to go to heaven, and they said no, that wasn't going to happen. That I had to come back to this world and give it another try. And we had a huge argument, and I argued as forcefully as I possibly could to go to heaven, and they argued very calmly and patiently that just wasn't that wasn't appropriate at this time. Maybe sometime in the future, but not now. And I had to come back here and give it another try.
So ordered to return.
They sent me back, and when I came back, it was now 9 o'clock at night, and that same day, and the nurse came into the room and said a doctor had arrived at the hospital, which was quite extraordinary for a Saturday night, and I had the surgery in an hour, which was quite important that I had that surgery.
I just want to go back to some of the questions that you asked as well. What did Jesus say about the Bible? Did he say that the Bible was quite accurate, or did he say there was sort of a lot of the Bible was missing?
Oh, I asked him, my question was, is the Bible true? And he said the Bible is about truth, but he said it's not to be understood that way. He said if you try and understand the Bible that way, you're going to get nothing out of it. He said the Bible is, it's really about the wisdom of God, and that when you read it, if you approach it reverentially and ask it to teach you God's wisdom, he said it's full of wisdom, and it's full of understanding and full of truth. But he said, the individual stories, some of those things never happened at all. I mean, like, for example, the story of the prodigal son, there was never any prodigal son. Jesus made that story up to teach us wisdom, to teach us truth. The story of the Good Samaritan didn't happen. There was no Good Samaritan. The guy that was beaten up on the road by the thieves, and the Good Samaritan came along, and that didn't happen. He made it up. I mean, there's lots of things in the Bible that are there about teaching. They're teaching stories, but they aren't necessarily. It's irrelevant whether they were factual or not.
And did you ask him about creation? I mean, what were you told?
Well, he told me that there's no real conflict between science and the Bible, that they're just different ways of expressing the same thing. I just find it really interesting that Jewish rabbis understand the creation story as being completely compatible with modern scientific revelation, including the time frame. And it's because of their understanding of the actual original Hebrew. So it's really only sort of people that don't understand Hebrew that come up with creationist, early Earth theories and things like that.
Now, one thing you wrote as well in your book was, that heaven is nothing like the image we have on Earth. Were there different levels?
Oh, yeah. It just almost unlimited variety of experiences and things and stages of heaven. There's heaven for the novice and heaven for the most experienced, and plenty of time to evolve and experience different levels of heaven, because we've got all the time in the world. I think the important thing about heaven, the experience of heaven, is that heaven is fun. It's full of love. It's full of joy. It's full of hope and laughter and interesting things. And the sort of understanding that we have of heaven, or that we're given in this world, is that it's like boring and monotonous, and that's so not true.
And when you was there, did you see? I mean, if you spoke about there were different beings there, but did you see different spirit beings as well? I mean, angels as well.
Oh yeah. The vast variety of different states of spiritual development in this universe. It's so much more complex than people think. When you use a word like angels, that's just saying like the creatures of the sea. I mean, it's a huge variety of different kinds of angels and spiritual development.
Did you get to ask what the best religion is?
Yeah, matter of fact, I did. But I do want to say that when I was asking the question, what I was thinking was something like Presbyterian, Methodist, Episcopalian, Baptist, Quaker, Mormon. I was thinking. The reason why I try and clarify was I wasn't thinking of world religions. I was just thinking of different kinds of, more or less Christian. And he said that the best religion is the one that brings you closest to God. And I said to him, well, that's not really a very good answer because I don't know what it means. Name one. Just pick the name of the best one. And he said, well, there's good people in bad religions, and there's bad people in good religions, so you can't say that one is necessarily better than the other. So, since it's been 25 years since I had that experience, I now understand how brilliant his answer was, because it was really true. The fact of the matter is that there's good people in fairly unsophisticated religions, and there's some really nasty people in some very elegant and beautiful religions. So it's not the religion, it's the individuals. I mean, how can you characterize Catholicism when there's like 1 billion Catholics in the world? You know what I mean? There's great Catholics and there's terrible Catholics. Same thing with all faiths.
Yeah, and in the Bible, it never mentions sort of other life out there, other advanced civilizations. But did they have an answer to this?
Oh yeah, I asked him if there was other intelligent life in the world, and he said, "Oh yeah, the universe was full of life." And he proceeded to show me images of other beings in other worlds and things like that, and it was just really quite mind-boggling, all the different diversity of things that he started to show me. As a matter of fact, it became so much that, okay, I said, that's enough. I don't want to see any more. Too confusing, But it's interesting because it seems like some people are afraid of the concept of the world being full of intelligent being, and I think it just makes the world just infinitely more wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, some of these pictures that you got to see, well, the images that you got to see in your mind, I mean, do they remind you of the classic sort of grey alien that you see in some of these films?
Oh yeah, and some of them looked like sea creatures, and some of them didn't even look human at all, and they were assuring that these were highly evolved and intelligent beings, and I'm like, but they don't look like us, at all.
Yeah. Now, in your opinion, then, is everyone going to meet Jesus, or is that just your experience? Do you think?
Well, I think no. I don't think everyone's going to meet him. Only people that would want to meet him will. If people don't want anything to do with him, they certainly won't meet him. But I think that he is he's the way that God meets us, because I don't believe that people can go from this world like right into the face of God. That would be a little overwhelming for a person. So Jesus is an intermediary way for us to come to God.
You were saying that you were seeking God, but aren't we all God in a sense? Aren't we all coming from that God and consciousness?
Well, I think we were created to be that, but I think a lot of people in the world decide that that's not what they want to be. I mean, I think there are people in this world who are actively trying to not be God conscious, and are literally devolving. I mean, I believe in spiritual evolution, that we were created to ultimately to be part of God's consciousness and part of the creative activity of God in the universe. That's our ultimate destiny, and that we bring to that our own unique and individual experiences and wills and selves to that. but there are people in this world who don't want to be a part of it. And one of the interesting things that God has given everybody in the world is the freedom to choose. You can choose to evolve into God consciousness, or you can choose to devolve into something very base that ultimately ends up in just the elemental soup, if you will.
So why come to planet Earth then?
Well, I asked about that, and it turns out that this is a very rudimentary place. This is not the great spiritual temple of the universe. Matter of fact, I said, so Earth is kind of like a low-level school. And he said, lower than that. And I said, you mean like a nursery school? And he said, yeah, more like a nursery school, sort of preschool school. And I said, it's that bad? And he said, very low. One of the lowest places for intelligent life forms in the universe. And I'm not going to go into it, but I did ask about other worlds where people are more spiritually evolved, where they don't, like, it's hard to believe, but there are actually worlds where people don't use expanding explosive gases to throw bits of metal into each other's bodies to get their way. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
There's worlds where people don't sexually molest children or physically abuse them as part of their life experience. Isn't that amazing? There's worlds where people actually love one another and help one another and care for each other. Anyways, quite unlike this world. So this world is an incubator, and a lot of people in this world go ultimately towards their own destruction and oblivion, and some people actually evolve up.
Okay.
Out.
Well, this sort of leads on to my next question then. If we don't get it right when we come here, I suppose this leads to this question really, are we on a set path to come here to achieve a goal, or is this more of an emotional experience to come down here? Are we learning our emotions, or, is there a set plan?
The goal is to choose love, to choose life, to choose hope. And if we choose those things, we are going to be we're going to continue on that path. And if we reject those things and choose the opposite, we'll achieve that goal as well. That simple biblical line, you reap what you sow, is exactly the way it works.
And did you discuss reincarnation? Is that something that they talked about?
Not really. I didn't ask about reincarnation as such, but I did ask, can people have other life experiences which would enhance their spiritual development? And Jesus said that sometimes people go to other worlds and have greater life experiences in other worlds, in more evolved worlds. I don't really think that people would be coming back to this world because, why would you repeat nursery school,
Well,
there's not that much to learn down here. You either get it or you don't. It's real simple.
Yeah, okay. I've obviously interviewed a lot of people that, have studied the reincarnation cases, and to them, they would be pretty sure that you do keep coming back until there's certain lessons that you get right, and one of them is unconditional love, which is what you've mentioned.
Yeah. I agree, but I think there's better places to learn those lessons than here.
So, when you're doing things, for example, like suicide bombers do these atrocities in the name of God, where do they stand?
They're in a really bad place. I asked Jesus, I said, what's the worst possible thing that you could do in this world? Because I was hoping that it wasn't something that I had done. I mean, that's why I asked the question. It wasn't idle curiosity. It was like, hopefully, I haven't done the worst thing. And he said the worst thing that you can do in this world is to use God to perpetuate your own cruelty and your own evil. So the idea of going around and picking up some messed up kid off the street and convincing them that what would really, really make God happy would be to strap himself up with explosives and get on a crowded bus and blow up as many people as possible. That's about the sickest thing you can do in this world. Most displeasing to God.
Yeah, because I don't think anyone has the right to take another's life. And I would go as far as in executions. I mean, how do we have the right to execute someone else? I mean, yes, they've killed someone else, but what gives us the right, as the state, to take their life as well?
No, and it's, if you want to punish people, keep them on death row. I visited for a number of years a man on death row, and he wanted to be executed because he hated living on death row, and he was like, I'm trying to fight the people that are trying to get my case looked into. I want to be killed. Get me out of here. I mean, punish. If people are interested in punishment, the people that have done these things should have the opportunity to live with the consequences of what they've done. That we had no right to kill anybody.
No, because it's like you said, when you pass on, your experience was you had to reflect on the other people's feelings. You had to feel what the families that were left behind on, and whatever the pain was that you put someone else through, and that must be the hardest thing to have to go through. Yeah, because the thing that people don't get is that we're all connected. Everybody in this world is connected. I mean, for one, scientists have now come to the realization that we've all come from the same mother. Everybody in the world is literally blood relation. I mean, Kevin, although we've never met before, you are my brother, and I am your brother, like it or not. But more importantly than the biological connection is that we're all connected spiritually, psychologically. In other words, we're all sharing this life, this world, and this existence together. Matter of fact, I think that a lot of times people experience other lives, sometimes lives from other times and other places. I know that I've had experiences in my life that was somebody else's experience. Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, I have a vivid memory of the Holocaust, which I wasn't born until 1946, so I don't know where it came from, but it's in me, Or was that a past life memory?
Well, I think it was somebody else's memory. I mean, my point is that we're all connected.
Okay.
Everybody's connected to everybody else, and we're making a mess of this world with all the hate and fear and selfishness. Because I mean, what a lovely world this could be if we all thought and treated each other differently.
But do you think, though, that you need the evil to know what good is? I mean, it's like the hot and cold tap scenario. You can't know hot if you don't know cold. So the whole reason there's such a mix of baggage on this planet is for the emotional growth that it gives you, perhaps.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, except do we need quite so much evil? You know what I mean? It's really intense.
Or is this boot camp? Is this boot camp?
Yeah, it's pretty rough going. Especially what we do to children and what we fail to do with them. Does it really have to be so hard on them?
Yeah. No, well, the answer's no, isn't it? I mean, it's we haven't got it right, and if the majority of people out there think we do, well, they need to wake up a bit, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose then, where are we heading towards? I mean, are we heading towards? Are we on the right path? Are we heading towards a sort of high-tech world where everything's going to be okay? I mean, where do you see us heading?
Well, when I asked Jesus about the future, the world that he showed me was completely not what I would have expected to see. You know, because of my age and my culture, you know, I grew up in a world of Star Wars and Star Trek and science fiction and stuff like that, and that's what I thought the future was going to look like. And the world that he showed me was completely opposite. What I saw was what appeared to be a no-tech or extremely low-tech world of people living in harmony with nature. He told me that these people controlled the weather. They could grow vegetables just by sitting by the plants and praying over them, and the plants would literally come to maturity before your eyes. There was very little sickness because people could do spiritual healing. People celebrated when people died because they knew that they were passing on to a better world. People lived in very small communities.
It sounds like
if there was technology, it was so discreet I couldn't see it. I couldn't recognize it.
It sounds like we'd become master manifestors to me.
Yes, exactly.
So, okay, you were ordered to go back, and when you woke up, how much time had passed for the amount of time that you had been in this realm?
Well, I think little or no time had passed, and when people asked me how long was my experience, I said it was much longer than it took me to go through graduate school, which was 3 years. I was in graduate school for 3 years, and this experience was way longer than graduate school. So there's no correlation between the clock time and the time that I experienced in my experience.
Incredible. 3 years it felt like. Oh my God. Right.
More than that. Way more than that.
So, they fixed you, you travelled back to the States. Was it hard to go back?
Well, they didn't fix me very well. I was sick for months afterwards. I came back to the United States sick, and I was in the hospital here for a couple of months and stuff. But anyhow, the good thing was that the angels were visiting me every day while I was in the hospital, and I had a few more opportunities to talk with Jesus, and I knew that what I experienced was the most important thing that ever happened to me in my life.
Well, what was the reaction to your wife when you was eventually able to talk about it?
Well, that's the unhappy part of the story. She could never accept it. She was she was and is a very high-powered attorney, and she thought I was completely bonkers, and she's into making like a lot of money and winning cases, and she thinks that I'm a silly ninny, and so she dumped me. She didn't want to have any more to do with me because all I wanted to talk was like, Jesus and the importance of church and loving one another, and she thinks that's all silliness.
Again, I suppose your course with your relationship with her had run its end. I suppose that was due to. Do you think it was just to show her a spark of what could be possible when life finishes, and she just wasn't able to accept that?
Yeah, and there were, like for example, after the experience, I quit smoking and I quit drinking, and she didn't want to give up those pleasures, which were very important to her, and things like that. So there was a lot of things that we became pretty incompatible about. I didn't want any more blasphemy. I, didn't want to hear any more heavy metal music and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of things changed about me which she didn't approve of. Before the experience, we'd been quite happy together, partying, drinking, smoking, being pretty wild and crazy.
Why did you quit smoking and drinking?
It's not like they're bad. I just didn't want to. They weren't part of who I wanted to project myself to be anymore. I mean, I'll still have a drink or a cigar or something like that. I mean, I don't think that they're like the worst things in the world. It's just I just didn't want to be that kind of person.
Yeah, you saw your body as a sort of car, and you've got to look after your car, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think smoking before? Do you think you may have seen it unconsciously as a death wish, and now you've had this
Absolutely.
experience, you came back and you wanted to live?
Yeah, and everybody who smokes, talks about coffin nails and stuff like that. I mean, everyone who smokes cigarettes knows they're killing themselves. I mean, that's no secret. I mean, it's like slow suicide.
Yeah. Are you remarried now?
Yeah, this whole thing about like what we are in our heart is what we attract. After my wife left me, I met a beautiful woman who was also divorced, and we are so happy together, and we share the same values, and we have so much fun. Life is it's incredible when you have, when you're spiritually, when you're matched with someone on the same journey, how much fun it can be.
I know what you mean.
We have
I mean,
a wonderful life.
I do this late night talk show, and it's a lonely leopard life because, I'm looking for that person, but she's not come along yet, and there's a reason for that, and it's probably because I've got so much to do.
Yeah.
It is lovely to be able to share that experience with that right person, but I think it's also when you're single for a long time, it makes you realize when the right person comes along how much you're going to appreciate it when it happens.
Yeah, and also when you have a bad marriage, you really appreciate a good one.
Exactly. Now, when you went back to work for the university, you must have been surrounded by obviously non-believers of life after death. I mean, what was that like?
It was kind of painful because when I went back to the university, I felt more love towards my colleagues and my students, and I was met with a lot of derision and a lot of cynicism. And I started going to church where I was met with interest and sympathy, and so eventually I felt way more attracted to the world of the church and felt increasingly less compatible with the university. Which is too bad because I kind of loved the university, but I didn't feel very welcome there. People thought I was a Jesus nut and stuff like that. I was trying not to be obnoxious about it, but I guess I was obnoxious enough.
So the intelligent people at the university were basically closing their minds to your message?
Very close, yeah. I mean, they just told me I was an idiot. I was foolish.
Yeah. Well, they're saying that from a standpoint of fear, aren't they?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's too bad that it's so threatening to them that they don't even want to discuss it.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, one other question I want to ask you, Howard, is how did you become a reverend then?
Well, I became more increasingly involved with the church. I loved the church because I saw the church as a place where a bunch of, and I mean this in all kindness, where a bunch of fumbling idiot human beings are all trying to figure out what it means to be a child of God, and what would that look like if we tried it, could we possibly strive towards that, to some kind of understanding of who it is we were created to be. And the church is where those people tend to gravitate. Not all of them, of course, but all kinds of people, all different walks of life, teachers, nurses, mechanics, bank presidents, realtors, insurancemen, just all kinds of folk. And I thought, I loved it. I just thought, this is great. This is like the incubator for people trying to know something about God and understand something about God, and I want to be a part of it. And the more I became involved, the more I realized that that's really what I wanted to dedicate my life to. So I went to seminary, and that was a wonderful experience. And graduated and was eventually called to a church, and I've been serving the church for 20 years now.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, if you had to leave people with one message, what would it be?
That God loves us very much, and that's what He's hoping for us, is that we will love ourselves and love one another.
And is there a website where people can get in contact with yourself?
Yes, and my paintings are on. I'm still painting, and I hope people can enjoy them. I just look at some of the artwork that I do, and it's howardstorm.com. One word.
Okay, well, we'll put a link on our website for yourself. Howard, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today.
It was a pleasure, Kevin. Nice to talk with you.
To find out more information on our guests, go to howardstorm.com or visit my site, themoreshow.co.uk, and look up Howard Storm under past guests. Well, until next time, be safe.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.